Hello, Cleveland. We have officially sounded the alarm on another 1085 Gridiron Victory podcast. I am your host, Anthony Jokey. As always, I got my co-host, Jack McCurry, running with me today. How you doing today, Jack?
Doing well, man. It's our third straight win. It's only our second straight victory pod because last week we weren't able to sit down and do one, but life is good. The Browns are on a roll, man.
Yeah, last week, I'll take full blame and responsibility for that one. I got pretty darn sick, and I was not in any kind of mood or shape to do a podcast. So we'll probably more likely discuss all the Pittsburgh stuff later this week with us playing them again next Sunday. But what we want to do is we want to break down this 41-24 Cleveland Browns victory over the Miami Dolphins today. And, Jack, let's just get right into it because the Browns started off this game on fire. The offense got the ball, went right down the field, put it in for 6. It started with a 32-yard screen pass to Nick Chubb, and then from there, Baker connected with Jarvis Landry from 7 yards out for the touchdown. And it just began a string of offensive possessions in the first half where the Browns were able to move the ball at ease, and you could really see the talent disparity between the Browns offense and a really, really bad Miami Dolphins team.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew coming into this game that Miami, they have some talent, but they've depleted a lot of their roster, especially on the defensive side. Trading Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously Rashad Jones and Xavier Howard are both out for the rest of the year. Aqib Talib, who they acquired at the deadline, still hasn't played for him. He's on injured reserve as well. So you knew that Baker Mayfield and all the talent around him would be able to just pick apart their defense. And like you said, right from the onset, that opening screen play to Chubb, and then they were just able to pick them apart on that opening drive. Baker would be able to roll out and be able to find, Landry a couple times, and then obviously connected with him in the end zone. So, they set the tone early on offense, and, it just kept going all day.
Yeah, it really did. And, the huge benefactor in today's game was Jarvis Landry. He finished with 10 catches for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. And for him, this week he said it was a really big game heading to Miami. Obviously, the team that traded him to the Browns. What did you make from his performance today? And, he just seemed to be the ringleader in all this, and you could tell that he was extra motivated.
Oh, no doubt. We always talk about, revenge games, and I guarantee, Landry woke up today and said, and probably all week felt like, I'm going to make this team pay. They traded him to Cleveland for barely anything, and, you heard the quotes like, they sent me to have my career die, essentially. That's what he said when they traded him to Cleveland. And, we all know Landry is talented, and, this was by far his best game as a Brown. And, it seemed like every time Baker threw it to him, Jarvis made a play. And, whether it was a quick slant or down the field, like Landry was dominant today. Like he set the tone early offensively, and everybody else followed suit. And as much crap as he gets on Twitter, Jarvis Landry proved today that he was worth that $14-15 million. Regardless of what some people think, Landry is definitely talented. I think after today's game, he's in the top 10 in receiving yards, and he's well on his way to another 1,000-yard season. So, just a great all-around game by Landry. And then with that, Beckham joined in on the fun as well.
Yeah, his LSU running mate, now Cleveland Brown, Odell Beckham, also joined in. He had 6 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. There was even a trick play that if they didn't bobble the handoff, Jarvis Landry would have had a clear touchdown pass to Odell Beckham. And this was the game to kind of break it out in, especially with the huge lead that the Browns got early. But those two guys today really stepped up, and against a team that they've had so many people injured. They've been bringing in defensive backs off the street all year long, and you could tell that these two guys specifically just attack that secondary all day long, and that was pretty much the game plan from Freddie Kitchens, was to attack the secondary, because those two guys combined with Baker Mayfield's effort today just were absolutely phenomenal. There's really no other way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, coming in, like I said, Howard's out, Jones is out, Fitzpatrick's obviously in Pittsburgh, Talib's out. Nick Needham, who coming in was a top 5 rated rookie by Pro Football Focus, but Beckham and Landry just toyed with their secondary all day long. Like the touchdown that Beckham had, and if you go back and watch, he was wide open on one side, Higgins is wide open on the other side, and Baker was able to just connect. And sometimes the timing with him and Beckham has been off. It was perfect today on that touchdown throw. Obviously, there's a couple that Baker would like back, including the interception, but he is getting into a groove, definitely with Landry and Beckham as well, and those guys were just dominant all day. And Baker even said, he goes, we don't really look at it as an entire group. We look at them on one-on-one matchups, and he said, I would put our guys against anybody in the league, and we think we could win those one-on-one matchups, and clearly they did for the majority of today's game.
Yeah, they did for sure. And, when you look at Baker's performance today, obviously they did a great job in the first half, but in the second half, they had some trouble getting the ball going a little bit, and they struggled moving it early on in the second half, and that's what allowed Miami to sort of get back in the game a little bit. At one point they made it 28-17, and they'd struggled to move the football. Baker threw that interception. They had a couple quick 3-and-outs, so the offense wasn't perfect today. There's definitely some things to build upon, but you could walk out of this game with so many different positives. And over the course of the last few games since the bye week, Baker has completed 64% of his passes, which is way up from earlier on in the season. 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 1,200 plus yards. So he's definitely improved since the bye week. Has he been perfect? No. Are there still timing issues? Yes. It's going to, with everything that went on in the offseason, some people missing OTAs, the timing just hasn't been there at times this season. You kind of saw it in the second half, but it is night and day from where we started this season out.
Yeah, Baker's definitely turned a corner. The offense has turned a corner. There's obviously some things that they need to work on. Timing's one thing, keeping a rhythm on the play calling is another, but they're winning. I mean, you can't really complain about that about things as much as long as we're winning. I think when we were losing, obviously we wanted to nitpick about everything, but the team's getting better. I'm seeing improvement to a degree on what Freddie's doing in terms of the play calling and handling everything as a head coach. And like I said, at the end of the day, the team's winning. I know a lot of people were complaining about stuff, and we hung 40 points on a bad team against the second time this season we've hung 40 points on a team. So there's not too much to complain about. With Baker, obviously the one throw to Beckham was behind Beckham. It was deflected, and then it got intercepted. Luckily, he threw another interception that wasn't his fault, and it got nullified because of a penalty. But, yeah, Baker's making strides. The offense is making strides, and we're hitting a stretch now where, Baker can really improve on his stats because, they're still not perfect, but they're all going in the positive direction, which is encouraging because it means that, Baker's finding out what he was struggling with, and he's definitely made some improvements in that aspect.
The thing that has really gotten this Browns offense going is ever since Kareem Hunt has come back, you've seen many different opportunities open up in the running game and in the passing game, and Nick Chubb has been certainly a better back since Kareem Hunt has come back. Today he had 106 yards on the ground, a touchdown at the end of the game. He had 58 receiving yards. You know, Chubb is really proving that he's one of the top backs in the NFL, and I think the addition to Kareem Hunt and the things that he's able to do in terms of when they get him out in motion, defenses respect him, and it opens up other lanes for Chubb. So I think the addition of Kareem Hunt has only made Nick Chubb better, and hopefully as they move on past the season, hopefully they can keep both of these guys here, and obviously Nick Chubb should be the featured back.
Yeah, I mean, the addition of Hunt has really helped this offense as a whole. Like, it's keeping everything honest. I think, David Njoku, once he gets back, that's even going to keep defenses having to be more honest, because, Njoku, he's talented. He's going to get his looks, and it's just going to continue to open things up for Beckham and Landry, because they're going to have to focus on 85 once he gets back. But, yeah, the addition of Hunt has been phenomenal. It's, he's been great as a blocker. They've incorporated him in the receiving game, although today it really wasn't noticeable. He's gotten more. He got more carries today as a runner, and he made the most of it. 37 yards on 8 carries, and he's been able to give Chubb a rest, but also hasn't taken away anything from Chubb. Chubb still got his 20-plus carries today. He made the most of that. So, adding another weapon like Hunt has really made this offense click. And obviously it's shown, because ever since Hunt's got back, the Browns are 3-0, and the offense has seemed to make strides in that as a unit.
Yeah, they asked him about that after the game. What do you think about ever since you come back, the Browns are 3-0, and he just responded, no comment, with a smile. So, and a little bit of laugh behind it. So, you could tell that he's thrilled to be back. The addition to him into this offense has opened up so many different avenues for Freddie Kitchens and his play calling. You mentioned David Njoku, and we'll talk about this next aspect more later this week, but when they go into Pittsburgh next Sunday, they'll have, besides Antonio Callaway, who they traded, they'll have all their weapons available to them in one game. They'll have David Njoku back. They'll have Chubb, Hunt, Odell, Landry, and Higgins. They'll have all those guys available in one game for the first time this season, and it couldn't come at a more crucial time with how this offense is going to have to carry this team now, with how many different injuries and suspensions the defense has taken. And obviously we'll talk about Myles Garrett later on, but this defense has taken a big hit. But the one stalwart of this defense, and the man who they need to resign yesterday, Joe Schobert, had 2 more picks today. He is just completely balling out the last 2 games. He had 2 picks against the Steelers last week. He had 4 passes defensed. He had a sack. Jack, I don't know what more superlatives we could put on Joe Schobert, but this guy is the heart and soul of this defense, and they really need to get a long-term deal figured out now.
Yeah, they really do, because if he keeps up this production, the price is only going to get bigger. And I'm with you. They need to sign him instantly. I mean, he did admit last week that negotiations are ongoing. Obviously, he's I'm pretty sure he's letting his agent handle it, but I would like to think, because him and Megan have a little one on the way coming in the springtime, he would probably prefer to stay in Cleveland so he doesn't have to uproot the family, especially with a newborn coming. I'm sure he loves it here. This has been his home since 2016, and he's playing at a high level. He's changed defensive coordinators, I think, every year, except, but Greg Williams he's had for multiple years, but he's undergone different defensive coordinators that have utilized him differently, and he has continued to adapt and succeed no matter what the scheme is. So, for a guy that was an outside linebacker when he came into the league and has transformed into one of the best middle linebackers in the game, I mean, the Browns would be crazy to let him go at this point. At the beginning of the year, I didn't think it was going to happen, but I think at this point, yeah, like you said, he's the heart and soul of the defense. Obviously, they're probably going to have to let a guy like Christian Kirksey go, and that's a shame because he is one of the leaders on that side of the ball. But you can't afford to let number 53 go because he's a great tackler, he's a great cover linebacker. You can utilize him as a pass rusher, which they did against Pittsburgh. He's a good all-around football player, and you don't let guys like that walk out the door.
If they cannot get a deal done with Joe Schobert, would you franchise him? Last year, the franchise tag for a linebacker was just around $15 million, so it'll probably be a little bit more north of that this offseason. Would you do that just so you could figure out the hopes of getting a long-term deal done?
Absolutely. You do not let him walk out the door. I don't care if you get what would be a third-round comp pick. You keep Schobert, you tag him, and then you go from there. If you have to pay him $15 million a year, you figure out all the other stuff after the fact. Pay him. Like, it's no question at this point. You were able to extend Treader. I think you still have like around $50 million or so heading into the offseason. You had the assets to get a deal done. Get a deal done before you even had to consider the franchise tag at this point. I mean, I'm sure they're working on it. I'm sure they'll come up with a solution by the end of the year, but they had to get it done quickly because, like I said, he keeps balling. The price tag is going to keep going up for him.
Yeah, and you're right. They cannot afford to let a player of his caliber walk out the door. They would, a third-round comp pick wouldn't even be guaranteed because if they sign somebody in free agency, that comp pick could go away. So, you're not even guaranteed a compensation pick at that point. So they need to re-sign him. We've been saying that for a long time. I think the majority of Brown's Twitter has been saying that. I don't know where all these people that were saying Joe Schobert is terrible. I don't know where they've disappeared to, but they seem to have gone away for a while now. Every week he just proves that he's one of the best linebackers in the National Football League. And right now he's putting together a string of games where he is absolutely dominant on defense. He's in the right place at the right time. And after that second interception today, I turned to my dad. I'm like, hey, can we use him at tight end? He seems to have a pretty good pair of hands. But I think that eventually Joe Schobert and the Cleveland Browns, John Dorsey, they'll get this deal done, and they'll have him long-term here. And he's a player who plays all out every week and is a guy who you want your entire defense to play like. So hopefully they'll get it done. I'm pretty sure they will. And, after 2 more interceptions today, we'll see how many more he can pile on as we move on towards the rest of the season. Now, while Schobert played well, the defense as a whole gave up a lot of chunk plays today. They did give up 24 points to the Miami Dolphins. And the couple aspects, at least to me, that struggled, Greedy Williams did not have his best game this season. And the pass rush, and I think that's kind of obvious with Myles Garrett being gone, no Olivier Vernon, no Larry Ogunjobi. To me, the pass rush really struggled to get home today. At least when they rushed 4. When they brought extra guys in, they were getting there and forcing pressure. But the 4 guys who lined up on the defensive line, when it was just those 4 rushing, they could not create any pressure today.
Yeah, I mean, and the other aspect was they weren't able to contain Fitzpatrick when he was able to scramble, and that was baffling because he's 37 years old. He's not really known as a scrambler, but he was the Dolphins' leading rusher today. But for the most part, they shut down the run just because Miami doesn't have a strong running game. Their best running back got cut last week because he punched a pregnant girl, which is a whole other subject for another day. Like you said with the pass rush, it was okay. Obviously, Sheldon Richardson, they were lining him up at defensive end. He had a couple sacks. He played well. Chad Thomas had a couple tackles for a loss. They had to bring in guys in the last couple weeks. Brian Cox. They called up Porter Gustin, who got his first career sack today. and Brandon Bryant on the practice squad. They had to bring, they obviously had to fill some holes with Ogunjobi out, Vernon's still injured, and obviously Myles Garrett suspended, and as he will be the rest of the year. But like you said, if they brought in extra guys, it made the pass rush work. But I don't even feel like they needed to bring in extra guys. I think it just shows the lack of depth up front. It's disappointing that like Devereaux Lawrence, who dominated the preseason, has just been silent all year, like hasn't been able to get anything done. But it's going to be interesting to see how this pass rush steps up in the final 6 weeks. Obviously, Myles is out. Hopefully Vernon gets healthy. Ogunjobi's back next week, so that'll be a boost. And hopefully Sheldon Richardson keeps performing at a high level. Obviously he is becoming a fan favorite more because of his comments post-game today, but he had a solid game. You just hope that, guys like Chad Thomas and some of these other young guys waiting in the wings could step up and produce, because we really need it down the stretch.
Yeah, pass rush is one aspect to where we really need these other guys to step up as we move on towards the rest of the season. Obviously, losing Myles is a big deal, and like I said, we'll talk about that more later this week when we talk about the Pittsburgh game next Sunday. But losing him is no easy task to replace. Hopefully, Olivier Vernon is ready to go for next Sunday. Not having him the last 3 games has been a big blow to this defense. Guys like Chad Thomas and Brian Cox Jr., Chris Smith, those guys are really going to have to step up and perform well. Maybe just even be average, just so you can force pressure on the opposing teams. Getting Ogunjobi back will be helpful, obviously. Richardson has been playing so well this season, and he doesn't really have the stats to show that he's playing well, but he does all the dirty work inside that he doesn't need statistics to show that he's playing well. His statistics are what you see on film, and what he's able to do, taking on double teams constantly, clogging up the middle of the lane so the linebackers can roam free to the runner. That's what he does best, and he's done a very good job at that this season. What I think is going to be interesting to see is how they decide to utilize pressure from different areas on the defense. A couple times today you saw T.J. Carey coming on blitz. They were blitzing Mac Wilson a couple times, Taki too. So, these guys, these young players and defensive backs are going to have to step up. And, this defense, took a major blow losing Myles and losing another safety as well in Morgan Burnett due to injury. And this defense is going to really have to continue to step up, and especially when you have the Baltimore Ravens still on the schedule, Pittsburgh, who struggled to score against Cincinnati today, is left. There's still some teams that could put up some points. The Arizona Cardinals in a couple weeks, that's not going to be an easy task to shut them down. Kyler Murray has been good, so there's still teams that could put up very good offensive numbers. So this defense is going to have to continue to step up in spite of all the losses that they have suffered this season, both from injuries and suspensions. And hopefully, as we go through this last string of games here, hopefully this defense can step up.
Yeah, definitely. The one encouraging thing about it is, you're going up against teams that have bad offensive lines. Arizona's is bad, although Kyler seemed to make it work, and obviously he's got the mobility. Cincinnati has a terrible offensive line. We get them 2 games. But you do go up against Pittsburgh, who has a solid line, but the Browns seem to be disruptive against them last week. And then Baltimore, they obviously are solid up front, and that's been like the key to their success offensively with Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram, among others. But the Browns seem to make it work to get disruptive against them too. So they're going to have to find ways to generate a pass rush. And you've seen it against Pittsburgh. They were using Schobert at times off the edge. I talked about it on our dog talk last week on our site. Why not use Taki? He's a little undersized, and obviously that was why Jannard Avery didn't work here, but he was utilized as a pass rusher at BYU. Like, Steve Wilkes is going to have to dial some stuff up. He's going to have to go in there and just see what can work. Like, if Chad Thomas and Chris Smith aren't generating pass rush, like, you just try something to see if it's going to work, because we cannot just hope that, we'll shut down the run and then not worry about getting after the quarterback. Like, we have to get after the quarterback down the stretch in order to win these games.
If the back end of the defense, Demarius Randall, Denzel Ward, and Greedy Williams are able to play well, that's only going to help out the pass rush. At times you can get covered sacks, and if those three guys are able to keep wide receivers in check, it's only going to help out everybody else underneath them. So complementary football is something that we've preached on this podcast for a very long time. So not only is it just offense and defense complementary, but the D-line needs to help out the secondary. Secondary needs to help out the D-line, who helps out the linebackers. So they need to get all that in check. And I'm sure Steve Wilkes has a plan, and hopefully they're able to perform well as we move on out. Austin Schobert, he has missed 3 field goals in the last 2 games. He did hit 2 of them today. Do you have any concern from him as we move on towards the rest of the season here?
Try not to, just because the missed field goals are on the one end of the stadium where there's the opening. And obviously we know how the wind swirls. Hopefully he's taking the advice that Phil Dawson gave him when Phil Dawson was in camp. Get down to the stadium more, I would just say. Obviously, the weather is definitely changing here in Northeast Ohio. My advice is Mike Prefer needs to take the kickers down there to the stadium a couple times a week if he has to. It's not that far away from Berea. Like, get them down there and let them get practice in that stadium, because we know how the wind swirls. Seibert's been solid all year, so I'm not discouraged yet. We'll see how he does this weekend in Pittsburgh, but I wouldn't, be hitting the panic button on Seibert just yet, because I think these are just little hiccups.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned about it. We haven't gotten to a point yet this season to where he's had to make a real big pressure kick. I'm curious if that's going to happen and when it happens. I hope he'll perform well, but when we get to that, we don't really know what we have. But so far this season, as a rookie, he's done very well. So there's definite signs of encouragement based on all the panic that we had in the offseason and training camp of who our kicker is going to be, and was it going to be him? Was he going to be able to win the job? He won the job, and he's performed well. So hopefully he can continue to kick well. And, we're not talking about too many missed field goals. And hopefully we're not talking about one that cost us the game at some point. The Browns did win today, and there were a couple teams that lost that have given the Browns an opportunity to get closer to that second wild card spot. I think the Bills are going to run away with that first one. They're sitting at 8-3 right now, but in that 6th spot are the Pittsburgh Steelers at 6-5. The Oakland Raiders are 6-5. The Indianapolis Colts are 6-5. The Tennessee Titans are 6-5, and the Cleveland Browns, after winning 3 straight games, are sitting at 5-6. Jack, the Titans do have the tiebreaker over us, so we have to win 2 more. Finish 1 game better than they do. But how realistic are the Browns' opportunities to make the playoffs right now?
I mean, obviously they are still in it as it stands right now. But like I said prior to the first Pittsburgh game, this upcoming Pittsburgh game is a must-win game for the Browns. Obviously, they win. They're 6-6. They win the tiebreaker over Pittsburgh. Oakland is a hit-or-miss team every week. Like last week, They look like they had turned the corner, then they come in and they laid an egg to the New York Jets. And then, Indy, they're also hit or miss. Brissett started off the season strong. He's struggled the last few weeks. Obviously, he was hurt as well. Tennessee, they look like they are trending upward. Ryan Tannehill's been balling. Now, obviously, you got the Browns where we're at. We're starting to trend up as well. But unfortunately, like you said, Tennessee has a tiebreaker over us because they beat us in week 1. So the Browns' chances are still realistic, but they really, at this point, can't afford to lose another game. They might be able to lose one more and sneak in as a 9-7 team potentially, but I would think at this point 10 wins would be the magic number, which means the Browns have to win out. How likely is that? Not very likely, just because we had to play Baltimore, who's red hot right now. Obviously, Pittsburgh's coming for us after what happened 10 days ago, so all I got to say is take it one game at a time. We're on to Pittsburgh, and we'll see how it goes after that.
The thing that really is in favor of the Browns is the one tiebreaker that they use is conference record. Right now, the Browns are 5-3 in the AFC. The Raiders are 4-3. The Colts are 5-5. The Titans do have the head-to-head, so they had a tiebreaker there. But the Browns have a better conference record than the Colts and Raiders. And then if we beat the Steelers on Sunday, we'll have the head-to-head tiebreaker over them as well. So it would come down to pretty much the Browns and Titans. If the Browns could finish one game better than the Tennessee Titans, they could sneak in there as that second wild card team. So there's still a realistic shot, but you're right. 10 days ago, it was a must-win game against the Pittsburgh Steelers to keep the playoff hopes alive. And if the Browns lose against the Steelers, they would have to win out from there. And that's going to be a tough task with the teams that they have remaining on their schedule. That Arizona game is not going to be easy, even though the Browns are the better team on paper. And then the Baltimore game, which is a home game, thankfully. But those two games are not going to be taken lightly, or at least they shouldn't be. So, and you have the Bengals twice, and their last game against the Bengals could be tricky because if the Bengals are 0 and whatever going into that last game, they'll be fighting for that W, and if the Browns are fighting for a playoff spot going into the last week, things can get very interesting. They played Pittsburgh very tough today at home. The Steelers ended up benching Mason Rudolph in favor of Devin Hodges. Cincinnati has a little bit of fight in them, it seemed like, but they just weren't able to get the job done today. We'll obviously continue to talk more about this, and I think the last thing, Jack, that we wanted to discuss today. Well, hold on. Before I forget this, because I have seemed to have done it a couple times so far this season, we put up a poll on who your 1085 top dog of the game is, and sitting currently, we've only put two options up there. We put Jarvis Landry, who had a monster game, and Joe Schobert, who had two more interceptions. Landry has 76% of the vote. Joe Schobert has 24%. So clearly, y'all think that Landry had the best game today. And, when you have 10 catches, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns, that's well-deserved honors for the 1085 top dog of the game. But before we get on here, Jack, Dee Haslam is somebody who I think is a person who this franchise really needed, and especially with all the stuff that Jimmy Haslam went through with the pilot flying J fiasco and the FBI and whatnot. Dee Haslam seems to be the one, Jack, who has kind of straightened all this out for this organization. And today, she was pictured wearing a Cleveland Browns hat that had Myles Garrett number on it, number 95 on the hat. What do you take from her support of Myles Garrett by wearing that hat with his number on it?
It doesn't surprise me. Everybody seems to be trending to being in Myles' corner with this situation that's obviously continuing to develop. With it seems like each day there's something new. The Haslams are very caring, I think, about their players, and I think this is actually an encouraging sign because a lot of people were wondering, like, how's this going to affect Myles' contract status because this offseason he's eligible to get the extension. I think this shows that the Browns are backing Myles 100% through this. Obviously, they're very supportive. If you've seen the team statements with the suspension, obviously it being upheld, that they're in Myles' corner. I think this shows that this offseason, if Myles wants to re-up with the Browns, then that contract will get done. I think the Haslams will do right by Myles. It seems like they will do that for any player in this organization. I just think this is a good sign that they are sticking behind their players no matter what the incident. Obviously, they've done that. You've seen how they've given multiple chances to guys like Johnny Manziel, Josh Gordon. Obviously, recently with Antonio Callaway, they've given Kareem Hunt a second chance when not a lot of teams would. The Haslams are good people. Are they been the best owners? Absolutely not. I'll be one of the first people to admit that. But it just shows that they are good people. They will stand by them no matter what the incident, and they're willing to give people second chances.
What do you think the overall, or what is your take on the overall impact of what Dee Haslam has done for this franchise? And I said that she's the hero that this franchise needed, and are you kind of in the same realm as that?
Absolutely, because I think Jimmy was definitely in over his head when he first took this job. I think he was listening to a lot to what the league was recommending and stuff, and I think Dee has come in and obviously kept Jimmy level-headed. I'm sure there's been times when Jimmy's wanted to blow it up again, and Dee's kind of calmed him down and made sure that they stay the course and stick to a plan. Sometimes that's not the brightest thing. I think, Hugh Jackson was obviously a black eye on the Haslams for allowing him to get a third season when, after a 1-31 mark, regardless of the talent on the roster, if you couldn't see that he wasn't working out as a head coach. But, they made that mistake. They swallowed it. They owned it. And obviously they've righted that ship with trusting John Dorsey, although he hasn't been perfect either, but it seems like the organization's heading in a better direction, and ever since Dee has stepped in more, it seems to be heading in that positive upswing.
They've done, like you mentioned, they have not been the best owners, but they have been doing good things for his community, and I think Dee Haslam is the main driving force behind that. They made that big donation to the Cleveland Orchestra and the school programs this just before the season. They've done a lot financially for the city in different aspects. They've been trying their darndest to bring a winning football team here. Have they gone about it in the best way? Probably not. But they've done a good job of spending money when they've needed to, on and off the field. And I think as the years go by, I remember in their introductory press conferences, I can't remember who said it, whether it was Jimmy Haslam or if it was Dee Haslam, that said that we're going to live here. We want to do things for our community, and I think they've done a good job of that. And I'm just very happy with what Dee has been able to do for this franchise. I think she's kind of stabled it, and hopefully these things can continue, and hopefully we do get that winning football team that they promised us. And we're on our way. There's still a lot of work to do, but those two people, and especially Dee, are not going to stop working until it happens. So there's credit to be had on their part. They have gotten things wrong, but those two have done it as best as they could, especially with being new owners, to bring a winner here. And hopefully we see the fruits of that sometime soon. Jack, as we get out of here, anything else?
I almost forgot. Today's win was finally the 100th win for the Browns since 1999. So I just wanted to add that in. Should have happened a long time ago, but they finally hit the century mark in victory since 99.
I saw that stat today, and I couldn't believe it. But with how much losing football that we've seen over the years, I guess it's not too surprising. I did see that number today, and I just looked at it and I'm like, wow. I'm shocked it took this long. But hopefully within the next, let's say 6 years, 7 years, we can double it. How does that sound? 200 wins in the next 7 years? Sound good?
They can't from 100. Oh, they'd have to go like
from 100 to 200.
They'd have to go like undefeated like 6 straight years. I mean, obviously I'd take that, but how likely is that, Anthony?
Well, let's see. 7 times 16 would be
112.
112 plus playoff victories. All right, maybe.
I think it's time for you to go to bed.
All right, let's settle for doubling it within the next decade instead of 7 years.
I can live with that.
Okay.
Let's just get through Pittsburgh first.
That's a very good point. And fantastic segue by you, because we will be back later this week to break down all the stuff that happened in the Pittsburgh game 10 days ago, since we weren't able to do anything last week, and we'll preview the game this coming Sunday. So we will talk about everything Pittsburgh later on this week. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. You guys can follow Jack on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE. Follow me on Twitter at Anthony Joki. Follow the podcast website at the Dogland on Twitter. You can find the podcast on every platform that has podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. With all that, we're going to get on out of here. Closing out this victory pod with, most importantly, Go Browns.